Let's look at this problem. Shauna takes 5 tests, each worth a maximum of 100 points. Her scores on the first 3 tests are 76, 94, and 87. In order to average 81 for all 5 tests, what is the lowest score she could earn on one of the other 2 tests? This is a typical problem about average. Again, we will solve it in 2 ways. If you checked my earlier videos, you can see that I normally solve it in one standard way and one slightly faster way. The standard way sometimes can be a bit slower, but I still want to introduce it every time because in higher level tests like AMC8 and above, the standard way is normally more applicable than the general way because you will see larger numbers and more complicated cases. Therefore, you have to be used to this way that apply the definition of an average directly. Anyway, let's get started. So in the first method, as we said, we'll apply the definition of an average. Before that, let's set the last 2 tests scores are A and B. Therefore, by definition, we'll have 76 plus 94 plus 87 plus A plus B divided by 5. That shall to this average, this desired average, 81. And the normal approach to handle an average is always you multiply this count, in this case 5 on both sides, so that you will get the sum of all the quantities, and then you start analyzing either the properties or some specialties with the numbers. Alright, let's do that. And by the way, I like these 2 numbers because 6 plus 4, that's 0, right? So we'll multiply 5 on both sides, and I'll do this first addition as well. So that's 170 plus 87 plus A plus B. That equals 405. And the sum of these 2 is 257 plus A plus B equals 405. And then A plus B gives what? In order for this average, we have to have the sum of the scores in the last 2 tests is 405 minus 257. That shall give us that's 8. Here is 9, 4, and 1. 148. Good. And what's the question? We want to know the lowest possible score she could earn on one of the last 2 tests. So which means we want one of the 2 quantities or the 2 variables A and B to be as low as possible. For example, we want this A to be as low as possible. In that scenario, the value of B has to be as high as possible. Then can you go to infinity? What's the highest score you can get in the test? That's 100, right? So the max of B is 100. We want this to go as high as possible. Good. In that scenario, we will see that A equals 48. Let's look at the choices. A is our solution, is our choice, right? So that's the standard way. Now let's look at the second approach, which is a slightly faster way. It may not apply the definition directly, but it can help you to understand the concepts of an average. So again, let's think of an average as a balancing point of a scale, something like that. And unless all the quantities are right at this balancing point, otherwise if some goes to the left and the others has to go to the right, to offset the deficit, or vice versa. If some quantities go to the right, which means you have some surplus, then others have to go to the left, so as you have enough deficit to offset that surplus. All right, let's do this. I'll draw a line just to show this balance. And what we have is here. In the first two tests, we have a 76. And don't forget, this is 81. Right? And 194. Let's assume 94 is here. And 187. Let's say 87 is here. And don't worry about the distance. This diagram is not to the right scale. So I'll mark the numbers on the top. So, okay, let's look at the deficit. How much deficit do we have from this 76? That's 5, right? We have a deficit of 5. I use this minus sign to show that. And the other two numbers give surplus. 87, we have surplus of 6. And 94, we have a surplus of 13. Good. Then what's the total deficit or surplus from these three numbers? Then that is minus 5 plus 6 plus 13. Minus 5 plus 6, that gives 1, plus 13, that's 14. Therefore, we know that we already got a surplus of 14 from the first three tests. Then what about the rest? In the rest, we want one of the quantities to be as low as possible, to go all the way to the left. Let's suppose that's A. And in that scenario, we certainly assume the bigger quantity go as right as possible. Right? So that will be our B. So can this go to infinity? Certainly not. The max value that this B can take is 100. Right? Let's assume 100 is here. So given that 100, then what is the surplus for this quantity? That's certainly 19. So we would have another 19 surplus from this highest possible score. Therefore, the total max surplus we could have is 14 plus 19. That is 33. To offset that, the lowest value, A, has to provide a deficit of 33 from this 81. Therefore, this A shall equal 81 minus 33. Right? 81 minus 31, that's 50. 50 minus another 2, that's 48. So the lowest score that she can afford in the last two tests is 48. The solution is A. That's our choice. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe the channel. If you have questions, please leave a comment.